Hello girls, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Dr. Neha. I welcome you on behalf of UGC Stride. So girls, today we are here for our fourth session. Now, Dr. Neha will give some insights about data coding. So we have done in our various three seminars about how to choose the topic and what are the how to make a research proposal, what are the different tools. Now once we have developed the tool, how to code it, and some parts of analysis. This is what Dr. Neha will give you information about. If you all have any doubts, please post it in the chat box, and we will take it in the end of the session. So I hope you all are now familiar with Dr. Neha. So I would ask Dr. Neha to start with the session. Neha, you are on mute. Yeah.
I am audible now.
Yeah, Neha.
Yeah, okay. Hi everyone. Hi Sonu. Thank you for the welcome. Hi girls. I hope you all remember some parts of the how to select the topic session. So when Sonu got to me, she told me that she wants to me to talk to you all about how do you do data coding, especially in context of when you are collecting data virtually. So for that, I want to first show you all some uh, uh, Google Forms that we have created for our studies. And then probably from there on, I will tell you all that what are the difficulties we faced during data coding and how we could improve them and what changes we needed to make sure that the Google form could have been a better out input if I had done it in a better way. Okay. Sonu, I don't mind if girls put on their cameras so I can see them. So I know they're not lost.
Sure, no
So
issues.
even that is okay with.
You can.
Yeah. So girls, or and y'all can, as Sonu said, y'all can share your questions in the chat. If you all want to ask something in between, y'all are free to ask. So I am going to first, okay, let me share my PPT and tell you all what we are going to cover today in the class. Okay. Okay. So can you all see my PPT?
Yes, Neha.
And I'm on the last slide. Sorry, girls.
Girls, please be attentive and please speak whenever Dr. Neha is asking you something. Please don't sleep. Already you were free long before this lecture. So be attentive.
Okay, so yeah, so we are going to talk about tips on statistical analysis of research data and interpretation, not basically interpretation but research analysis, coding, and how do you choose the test. I wouldn't be talking about interpretations today because you all are still far away from having your own data, and interpretation should come at that point of time. So I'm going to be covering three topics now. Levels of measurement and data entry should be a revision for you all because this is actually covered in theory of research methods and statistics. However, to understand coding, we need to understand or revise levels of measurement and data entry. Uh, then we need to, before we choose the test that we are going to apply, we use a test. We have to analyze the data for normality, and then we choose the statistical test. Now you will say, okay, ma'am, we have not yet started collecting our data. Why do we need to know what statistical tests are, and how do you choose this? I'm sorry, how do you choose the statistical test? So you will say, okay, ma'am, why do we need to know this at this point of time? Well, it's very important because statistical tests decide the sample size that you're going to take for your study. Okay, so if you do not know what statistical test you're going to apply, how you're going to compare your data, you really cannot calculate the sample size of your research proposal. So when we write a statistical proposal, I don't know if you all have ever got a chance of reading a research proposal. a research proposal very specifically has a section for statistical analysis. Even when we send a research proposal to ethics committee, there is a completely different section for statistical analysis, because that tells the reviewer to see whether what test you're going to apply, and based on those tests your sample size is okay or not. So before even you start planning your study, you need to have some basic knowledge about what are the different statistical tests that are there and what test you use in what time. So that's the reason why it's very important for you all to understand the different statistical tests to be used right at the start of your research project. Okay, so first we'll do levels of measurements and data entry, and then I'll go back to Google Forms that we have done in recent past. So I'm going to show you all 3 different Google Forms that I've done in recent, you can say from the time of lockdown till today. So I have done about say 4 studies in this lockdown. So I'm going to show 3 out of those 4, or rather 5. The 5th one, we have not formed the Google form, but the questionnaire is ready. So it just needs to be converted into the Google form. Okay. So first of all, when if you are not doing data, and if you're not collecting data from Google using Google Forms, but are physically doing a survey, you would end up entering data on an Excel sheet. Okay, so one of the most biggest, commonest mistakes that students make is that they don't know how to enter headings of your columns in the Excel sheet. So first of all headings need to go only in the first row on the Google sheet, or sorry, on the Excel sheet. Okay, and the headings of your columns should always start with an alphabet. Any statistical software, most commonly used statistical softwares are SPSS and Stata. Now, both these softwares do not accept a column heading if it starts with a number. It will accept a column heading only if it starts with an alphabet. So suppose if I want to write any parameter, say if I'm doing a intervention study and I am studying say something at 0 weeks, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, I cannot write 1 week PTH or 1 week hemoglobin or 1 week serum glucose. I have to write serum glucose 1 week. I have to write serum glucose 2 weeks, like that. So your alpha column headings cannot start with a number. Okay, again, both Stata and SPSS do not take any space or hyphens or special characters like your inverted commas, question mark, exclamation marks in the names of your column. Okay, so your column headings, it can only have alphabets, numbers, and it can have a dot or an underscore. So for example, in the example I gave you, it can be glucose underscore 1 week. And again, there cannot be any space between any of the words. Okay. So this is the right way of entering data, wherein all your data goes in one single line. As you see here, I've tried marital status. Now there are 2 words. If I put marital space status, it will take in Excel. But the moment you import this into an SPSS sheet, it will say illegal variable name. So any headings or any data that you collect as a part of research is called as variable. Okay. So we'll be using this word continuously throughout the class today. So remember, so whether it's serial number, name, date of birth, date of DOE is date of examination, age, every single data that you collect is known as variable scientifically. And this is the wrong way of doing data entry. Now, a lot of times what happens is when you're doing a survey, you'll have one broad question which will say medical history. And in that, you will have sub questions which would say, okay, do you have diabetes? Do you have hypertension? Do you have chronic heart disease? Do you have stroke? And normally what happens is when girls or when students enter data, what they would do is in the top row, they will write medical history. And in the bottom row, they would write the further classifications of the diseases that they have studied. But you need to remember, when we import this data into any statistical software, you have only one single row of headings. Okay, so you really cannot divide your data into 2 rows like this. Your data has to be like this in one single column. So when it's diabetes, hypertension, CHD, stroke, other problems, I don't need to, as a statistician, or even when you are doing analysis by yourself, you don't need this medical history heading. You just need to know what the data is, whether it's data is pertaining about diabetes, hypertension, CHD, stroke, or other health problems. Okay. So again, if you see, there is what other mistake is there in this data sheet. Marital status has been written with a space in between each other. Other health problems has other space, health space problems. So again, this is wrong. I needed to write it like marital underscore status, other underscore health underscore problems, or I could have used a dot, other dot health dot problems. So that's the wrong way of entering data. Okay. So before we go to the Google Forms and Google Sheets, let's first quickly do what are the different levels of measurement. So we have two basic levels of measurement. One is categorical data and one is continuous data. Okay, so I'm sure that all of you all, when you all studied research methodology, you all have done these terms, but I'm just going to revise it again, because when I show you all the coding that we do, this is something that you need to remember. So when you have categorical data, in other words, it's also known as coded data. So coded data is of two types, nominal and ordinal. Now nominal data is like, you know, male, female. Or you say, I am from Mumbai, I am from Delhi, I am from Pune, so the place of residence. Okay, there is no correlation between each other. A male is a male, a female is a female. A female cannot become a male cannot become a female. And if you say, ma'am, we can undergo a surgery, then they become transgender. They will neither be males, they will not be females. So that's another category of gender, which is transgender. So nominal data is data which have very specific distinct categories, and a person who falls in one category cannot be categorized in another category. Okay. Ordinal data is a data wherein there is a particular order in data. For example, a person who has completed say only 10th standard is less educated than a person who's completed his 12th, who in turn is less educated than a person who is graduate. So there is an increasing hierarchy of education. Okay. So when there is a hierarchy in your work or in the data that you collect, it's called an ordinal data. And anything that you can measure on a scale, by a scale, I don't mean a foot ruler. By scale, I mean something which has units. Okay. So your height, weight, BMI, your circumferences, your temperature, even ratios that you calculate, all of that comes as continuous scale. Now, thankfully, even though continuous data is of two types, that is interval and ratio, when statistical practical application is concerned, they are both clubbed together as continuous variable, or in SPSS, it's known as scale data. Whereas nominal and ordinal has to be distinctly identified whether you're using SPSS or Stata as either nominal or ordinal data. There are some higher tests which will need you to very, very clearly identify whether your data is nominal data, ordinal data, or it's a continuous data. So because this class is all about coding, so let's understand that if you have nominal data, how you're going to code them. Okay. So the first example of nominal data that all of you are going to collect is going to be gender. Okay. It's not sex, girls. When you put make a survey form, whether it's physical survey form, whether it's Google form, I always find it very odd that as scientists, you need to write the word gender, because gender is the right term and sex is not. Okay. So please, first of all, use the word gender. Okay. So if you're using gender, males are always coded as 1, and females are coded as either 0 or 2. Now, it doesn't matter. Females can be coded as 1 and males can be coded as 2. But as a statistician, that's the journal perception that we have, that when a data sheet comes to us and we see codes, we always assume that males are 1. Okay, so I'll give you an example why it's important. So in my one of my very first research projects, I wasn't used to mentioning codes on my Excel sheet. Okay, because I had just started and I didn't know that when you send your data across to a statistician, you need to make a coding sheet and you need to give to the statistician that this is the coding sheet I have used, because the only coded data in my entire sheet was gender. Okay, so I didn't even know I had to do it because that was the only coded data. I had no other coded data because everything else was measured on a DEXA machine. So I had BMD measurements of children. So I very happily sent the data sheet to the statistician, and so the statistician was my co-guide for PhD, and she never did our analysis by herself. So what I had done was I had sent her my analyzed data and I had sent her the raw data sheet. So what my co-guide used to do is she used to reanalyze all the data that we have analyzed to see if we have done the correct analysis. So then she gave me a call all of a sudden, you know, early in the morning next day, Neha, all your analysis is wrong. You know, what I am getting for males, you're getting females, and what you're getting for females, I'm getting for males. So I am like, ma'am, it can't be that I have done such a huge mistake while I'm reporting the data. So then she asked me, what did you code male and females as? So I told her, ma'am, males had coded at 2 and females had coded as 1. So that is when she told me that as a standard in statistics, by default, everybody assumes that males are 1 and females are 0 or 2. That's the reason I'm telling you that use that as the coding. Males as 1 and females as 2, or boys as 1 and girls as 2. This coding also applies when you use WHO Anthro and Anthro Plus for your Z-score calculations. It will assume that male, if you have coded gender there as 1, then it will assume that it's a boy child that you're talking about. So it's always best that, you know, you take it because it's a standard coding which a lot of softwares automatically detect, also like WHO Anthro. Okay, another example of your nominal data would be religion. See, whether I'm a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jain, Sikh, or any other religion, when they come a part of my research data, they don't get any preferential treatment. Okay, I can code Hindu as 1, I can code Muslim as 1, I can code Christian as 1, I can code Jain as 1. It wouldn't make another one superior to the other. Okay, so religion is another example of nominal data wherein I just code it based on, I can code any religion, give any religion any coding like I could do for gender. Gender, only reason I said that you maintain 1 for males because that's the standard coding. Okay. Another very commonly used nominal data in nutrition is vegetarian, the type of food habit. Okay, so vegetarian, non-vegetarian, vegetarian, vegan. You can have n number of based on the kind of data you want to classify and the number of classifications you want to make. You can just have vegetarian, non-vegetarian. I can have vegetarian, non-vegetarian, vegetarian. I can also add vegans to this, but whether I code vegetarian 1 or whether I code non-vegetarian 2, it doesn't matter to my analysis because one is not superior to other. Another example of nominal data is where you have data for smoking, whether the consumption of alcohol, exercise, medical history, where the data is as yes or no, that is the prevalence of diseases, then yes is always coded as 1. Okay. And I always now see with so many years of analysis, I have realized that if you enter no as 0, you can do a lot of calculations which makes your job easier. Okay. So I would say code no as 0 and yes as 1. You could also code no as 2. Okay. Again, marital status is an example of nominal data. So this is how you code data on and this is how your data would show on your screen, that is serial number, gender, religion, type of family. And normally when you're sent, it's not just for the statistician, it's even for you, because there is chances that you might want to visit a data sheet after a few years and you've not converted all your data from Excel into SPSS, or you know, people who are doing PhD, they have continuous data collection and they might forget what are the codes that they have used. So what we normally do is we enter few columns or rows above columns wherever the data is coded, and we mention what each of the codes stands for. So even if I go back to the sheet after 10 years, I would know, okay, in this column 1 is for boys and 2 is for girls. Okay, in this column 1 is for nuclear family and 2 is for joint family. So that's how we always mention it on our Excel sheet. What are the codes for the particular person? Now, next we come to ordinal data. As I said, education. Education is the most basic ordinal data that we use in nutrition and dietetics research. Almost every time we do a research study, we will ask what is your educational qualification. Okay, so it doesn't make sense for analysis purposes to write 8, 9, 10 like that, you know. So we normally keep it as illiterate. Primary, intermediate is normally okay, graduate, postgraduate, or we have SSC, HSC, graduate, postgraduate, and PhD categories like this. Socioeconomic data again is ordinal data, low, middle, high. Now, if you see both education and low socioeconomic status coding that I have seen, illiterate I have coded as 0, whereas postgraduate I have coded as 4. Okay, what I again low I have coded as 1 and high I have coded as 3. What I want to show to you or bring to your notice is that when you have ordinal data wherein there is an order, you give the lowest coding to the lowest value. What do I mean by lowest value? Now somebody, as I said, that who's illiterate, who has no education, who's never been to school, he has no education. So I have given him a coding of 0. I could have given a coding of 1. That means he has the lowest education in my study. As against somebody who is postgraduate who has the highest education in my study. That's why I have given him coding 4. So if I had PhD, I would have given him coding 5. Okay. Now food frequency questionnaire. Now when we make a food frequency questionnaire, normally our first column is a column for daily. So when students enter data on the Excel sheet, normally they will code daily as 1 and never as 5, or daily as 0 and never as 5. But that's the wrong way of entering data, or that's the wrong way of coding data, I would say. Now I'll say that I have pulses, or I have coffee every day. Okay, that means I am having coffee 30 days in a week. As against, let's take Sonu. Sonu says, I have coffee 15 days in a week. Sorry, I have coffee every alternate day. So that would make it for 15 days in a month. As again, says someone, okay, let me open the, so as against, let's say, Aarti says that she has coffee once in a week. So that would mean that she has coffee 4 times in a month. Now, if you see, I have had the highest coffee, which is 30 days in a month. Okay. Sonu had the second highest coffee, which was 15 days in a month. Whereas Aarti had the least amount of coffee, which was 4 days in a month. Okay. Which was weekly. So now now you can see that I have the highest intake, then Sonu, and the lowest intake is in Aarti. Now, if I code myself as 1 and Aarti as 3, the whole gamut goes wrong, you know, because I have the highest intake, so I need to have the highest coding. So I need to be rated 3, Sonu needs to be rated 2, and Aarti needs to be rated 1 because she has the lowest intake. Okay, so when we have food frequency intake, the lowest frequency gets the lowest coding, whereas the highest frequency gets the highest coding. So now if you say never, we have given as 0, whereas daily we have given as 5, because in R we have 6 codes: never, monthly, fortnightly, weekly, alternate day, and daily. Okay, so from 0 to daily, I have 6 codes as I've started from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 would be my daily and 0 would be the never coding. Another example of coding of ordinal data is sensory evaluation scale, which so now if you're developing a food and you want to see palatability, the taste, the smell, so the scales that you use, the Likert scales, they're the sensory evaluation scale. So 1 to 10, again, normally we say, okay, when we ask the panel to give a reflection of how they like the food, we say from a scale of 1 to 10, taste, how much do you like the food? 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Okay, so again, it's an ordinal scale. So this is how you would enter data. So this is just an example for you all to see. Okay. So again, if I want to find out something like frequency of skipping a meal. So here again, if the person is never skipping a meal, instead of 0, I've given 1 as coding. 1 is acceptable when you give coding. Okay, it's not necessary to give 0 as coding for none. Okay. Then twice a month, once a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and daily. Again, daily is the highest skipping of meal. That's why it has the highest coding. When you have continuous data, you enter actual values. So even your intakes, like your fat intake, calcium intake, iron intake, they are all continuous data. You don't need to code them. You need to enter the actual values and you need to enter values without units. As you can see on this data sheet, I have not entered grams against fats. I have not entered milligrams or milligrams against iron and calcium. So you just enter the actual values without units. Okay. So what are some more data entry and processing tips I want to give you all? Okay. For macronutrients, always remember you need to calculate percentage RDA or percentage energy intake obtained from macronutrients. You know, total energy doesn't make sense. I need to say how much energy came from proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So that calculation is very, very important. Also, uh, I can have a 5-year-old child in my study, and I can have a 30-year-old or a 60-year-old child in my person in my study. I can have people from different age groups in my study. Even if I'm just talking about children, I can have a 3-year-old child, I can have a 5-year-old child, I can have a 18-year-old girl. Again, I can have a boy, I can have a girl. If I want to compare nutrient intakes amongst population, I have to calculate percentage RDA intake. So just total energy intake or total nutrient intake is not enough. I need to compare it with my RDA and calculate percentage RDA. Okay, again, for anthropometric parameters, you need to calculate BMI, waist circumference, body fat ratio, waist hip ratio, waist height ratio. And again, I need to classify, so waist height ratio, BMI and all I will calculate. And for something like waist hip ratio, waist circumference or any of these parameters, I need to classify my population as being underweight, normal, overweight and obese. So I have to make these categories for further description of my data. Okay, so remember to make, you enter the actual data and then make categories also. Again, for bloods, you need to classify. So suppose if you have HDL, I need to see how many percentage of population has lower levels and how many have normal levels. When I talk about hemoglobin, again, I am talking about, you know, how many percentage of women or men in my study have low hemoglobin and how many have normal. Whereas on the other side, if I talk about HbA1c, I talk about serum glucose, I talk about LDL, triglycerides, I would be interested in what are the people who have normal, mild, normal and high, because there the higher categories are at risk categories. So I always have to classify my participants in the study in blood in different categories as low, normal, high, depending on what parameter you are studying. Okay. Now, when we do a KAP study, I have to calculate how many percentage answers did the person get right. Only then I'll be able to justifiably say, okay, the population has 50% knowledge of the topic, or the population has 100% knowledge of the topic. Unless and until I calculate the percentage correct answers obtained by a population, I cannot go ahead with my analysis. Okay. And then you, if possible, you need to calculate the dietary diversity score. Okay. And as I said, now this is from an SPSS sheet. In an SPSS sheet, you need to identify whether the data is continuous. So if it's a continuous data, you identify it as a scale data. And if it's an ordinal data or a nominal data. So this has to be specified very clearly on an SPSS sheet. Okay. So before now, next, before we actually go ahead and see how do you assess normality of the data, I want to show you all some practical examples of how a Google form looks like. Okay. So, okay. So I am not going to show you all the actual form because that would You all won't be able to see. Okay, let's see. So this was a study which was done. Just give me a minute, guys. This was a study done to analyze the knowledge about nutrition in married women. Now when I send this questionnaire out, I cannot start directly with the questionnaire. Okay. So always when I'm doing a survey, I have this bit of, description that who is the person, why is he doing the study. So let me see. I think this is opened here. So when a person now clicks on the form and reads, this is how it will show that the person has introduced herself, that she is a IGNOU student. She is doing this research as a part of her MSc thesis. And then she would say that, now I need to tell the participant why I am doing the study. Normally when we do our physical surveys also, we always put this bit as to why we are doing this study. So we've put that. And because this is a online survey, we also put in, how much time they're going to collect the data. And then we always have to mention that all the information will be kept confidential and their names will not be put out anywhere. That's very important. Okay. Always collect names, date of birth, because or age. I prefer collecting both so that I can collaborate with the two. Email IDs, when you're doing a survey, which is an online survey, make sure you collect email IDs. A lot of people don't want to give out their phone numbers. I would have said they collect phone numbers also, but people don't like giving out their phone numbers, but they don't mind sharing their email ID. So we normally ask email ID. Now this survey was only within India. Okay, so we have the city that we have asked. This was not a cross country study. This was just a within India study. Then as we've seen now, this survey was being done in online. Okay, so everybody, we expected that a person who is going to fill this form would have a minimum qualification of 10th standard. That was our expectation, because we don't expect that anybody who is less qualified would be able to fill our form, because there are quite a bit of words there and they might not be able to fill it and use it. I'm not saying that people with less education cannot use computer or they cannot fill in the forms, but we just expected that the kind of population that we were looking at, they were more educated. That's why we didn't have a category for classifying people below SSC completed. However, just in case there was someone who was less qualified, we had given this option of others, so they could have added others here. Okay. Now what happens is that if you and I go ahead and do a research study, what will happen is that we will end up sharing it on social media. We will end up sharing it on social media, or we would ask our friends and families to fill the form. So when we ask our friends and when we ask our family, they might not be nutritionists, okay, or they might not be health professionals. But when we talk about friends, apart from our school friends, if you ask your friends, they might as well be nutritionists only. Okay. Now this particular study was KP on nutrition in married Indian women. Now imagine I am doing a study in nutrition on knowledge of nutrition in married women, and if nutritionists are a part of this study, it will be drastically affect my results. Okay, so that's why we asked this field of work or study. So what we had decided was that we would remove all the nutritionists or any health professional from this survey, because we don't want their professional education to affect the outcome of our studies. So when you are doing a survey, which is an online survey, and you think that a profession like nutritionist, or you might have doctors, homeopaths, physiotherapists in your friend circle, which might affect the results of your survey, make sure you ask the field of work or studies, even if it's of no importance to you as far as analysis is concerned. Okay. Then we wanted to find out the amount of oil they consume. That's why we had asked this number of adults in the family, then work status, and simple things like that. Okay, so this was the first bit of it. Now for the second bit of it, I want to show you all. So we had these questions which were true and false questions. Okay. So for example, 10 grams of proteins and carbohydrates have approximately the same calories. Okay. Next question was honey contains lesser calories than sugar. Next question was egg yolk is rich in cholesterol and is very bad for health. And my options are true, false, and don't know. Now, when I code this data, when I convert this data into coding, now if you see 10 grams of proteins and carbohydrates have similar amount of calories, that's a true answer, right? So I will code true as 1 and false as 0 and don't know also as 0. Next question, honey contains lesser calories than sugar. It is hardly a matter of 1 calorie per gram, or say 5 grams per, for 5 grams, it's hardly a matter of 1 calorie. It's almost similar amount of calories. So you have to first decide whether you're going to consider this as a true statement or a false statement. If I'm going to consider this as a true statement because there is still a difference of 1 calorie, then I would have coded true as 1 and false as 0. However, in the next question, it is egg yolk is rich in cholesterol and is very bad for health. Now we know, based on the new research, that cholesterol in egg is good cholesterol and it's really not very bad for health. So this statement, the participant should have ideally answered it as false. So when I code this data here, I will not code true as 1. I would code false as 1. So when I have a true and false kind of a data, I want to assess the knowledge of the people. I will code 1 or give 1 mark. Here 1 I'm giving as 1 mark for the correct answer. If the person has given incorrect answer, I will code it as false. So I'll show you all. So this is how you go about and coding data. So in KP, you always give a correct answer or 1 to a right answer and you give 0 to wrong answer. Now here you see what according to you is a balanced diet. Now the options that we had was a diet rich in proteins, a diet poor in fats, a diet without carbohydrates, and a diet containing all nutrients in proper quantities. Now in this question, the correct answer is the fourth option. So only if the participants selected this as the answer would I give this participant 1 mark. If they had selected any of the other 3 answers, I would have given the participant 0 marks, because that would mean that the person has no knowledge or does not have appropriate knowledge for this question. The next question was, which of the following are nutrients that you have heard about or aware about? Now, this is a multiple choice answer. I can just tick, 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 tick here. Okay, whatever I am aware about. Now, I'll tell you all that this questionnaire I haven't edited because I realized the issue of coding after I have reached only 83. This is another questionnaire wherein we have collected or done a study on knowledge and attitude and practices regarding diabetes mellitus. Now this questionnaire also has a multiple choice question. If you see here, do you or your family members suffer from diabetes? Now if I convert this questionnaire, so these are my responses here. So if I create an Excel sheet out of this, this is the Excel sheet. If I see here, okay, wait, sorry, this is not the one, this one. When you use multiple choice questions, no, what happens is, sorry, the same sheet is open. Just a minute ago, I'll open the Excel sheet. this is the question that I was talking about. Do you or your family members suffer from diabetes? When it is multiple choice questions, what happens is that now this person has said that yes, the grandparents as well as parent-in-laws have diabetes. Now this person said parents and grandparents both have diabetes. When you choose multiple choice questions as a form part of your Google Forms, it will put all the answers in one single row. It will not create a different row for each option. यहाँ तो फिर भी ठीक है, but see for now example I'll show you. This is the question wherein we had asked, are the participants aware about the different illnesses that a person can get from or complications of diabetes? Okay, basically, what are the organs that get affected due to uncontrolled diabetes? This is the question. Which of the following organs are affected due to uncontrolled diabetes? And we are given option as heart, nerves, kidneys, eyes, lungs, brain, stomach, and others. Now when the Google sheet is created, it will put all of this into one single row. The issue is कि यहाँ this looks fine, you know, like ma'am, what's the problem? One single row, what's the big deal? But when I have to code this data, I have to convert this into individual columns. So I will create one column for heart, one column for kidney, one column for eyes, one column for lungs, one column for stomach. So if the person now here, this person has said yes for these 5 organs, I will put 111 in all these 5 columns and 0 in the columns that the person has not reported. For this person which kidney, he has only said kidney, so I will give 1 for kidney and rest I will say 0. So this, I'll show you how this sheet looks like once the sheet is made. Okay, so I will have to convert these multiple choice questions which get coded into one column into different columns. I'll show you how we converted this data once it was coded. So once this data is coded from that one single row, it gets converted to multiple rows, okay, or multiple columns. So you need to be very, very careful as a kind of data question you type you are selecting when you are collecting Google Forms. Okay, so if it's a yes, so this kind of this is called a checkbox style of questionnaire, wherein it's a multiple choice question. Okay, whereas this type of a question wherein I'm asking true and false, this is called as multiple grid choice, wherein I will choose only one. It's either yes, either true, or either false. Okay, now if I wanted to have true, false, and see, check grid means the person can select both true and false, and don't know if I have a don't know option. Okay, so check grid is that kind of a question. Multiple grid is where you can choose only one single option of the 2 options. Check grid is wherein they can choose multiple options of the options. Okay, so like that. So again, so to overcome this issue of multiple choice questions, I'll just show you all how it looks after coding. So after coding, this is how the data looks. Okay, now if I go heart, I will just look for heart. Okay, again the student, I then told her, you know, she again see the mistake of the student, she has put it in 2 columns. So this sheet was again sent back to the student and the student was asked to name everything in one single row. So there you saw this particular question where we'd asked which of the following organs are affected due to heart disease, and all the data was in single column. When coding, we converted this into several columns. So heart, nerves, kidneys, eyes, lungs, brain, stomach, others. So if the person had ticked for those answers, we put 1. If they had not, we put 0. So this is how you would have to do for all multiple choice questions. Therefore, to prevent this issue, rather than creating questionnaire like this, when you even have multiple choice, no, don't go for, don't do it like that. Do a grid choice question and put it as yes and no. So instead of, so this is our latest study. Wait. We're doing a study on knowledge of immunonutrition in, it's a cross-country study. First of all, that's my very first cross-country survey. We are collecting data from across the globe. So just a minute, it's opening. So see, this is another survey. This is service currently going. Now, as I said, this was a cross-country study. So this question, country of origin, we didn't want to, the girls decided that, ma'am, instead of giving them an option to type out, let's give a list of countries across the globe. So these girls really did a lot of efforts. They manually typed 190, I think, countries list, 197 list. And the type of questions that they selected was a drop down question. You can see drop down. So when I open the form, this is how it looks. It will give me a drop down option and I can choose India if I want to choose. Okay. Again, religion, because you are doing a cross country study, we could have different religions participants in our study. So we noted down all the major religions in the study on the drop down menu. Okay. Again, education, we did as a drop down menu. Now, I'll tell you all now this question, no, originally here, this question, if you all see, which type of the following, which of the following help boost immunity? First, this question was developed as a multiple choice question, as the checkbox question. But then I realized that we've already realized with two of my surveys that this kind of a multiple choice questions where you have to create different columns after the data is collected is very difficult. So we converted this into a check grid kind of a question wherein yes and no. So Google will automatically create different columns for each of the options. When you get the data sheet out of Google, if everything would be like this, okay? So this is how the data sheet would look like, true, false, or your actual codes, what you have entered. But for data analysis purposes, I have to convert this data sheet into something like this, wherein I've actually coded everything. Okay. So you need to code all your data before you analyze your data, even if you're doing a Google survey. Now, why you have to code? Because statistics is all about maths. If you do not code, how are you going to analyze the data? Okay. So coming back to the PPT. Okay. So I hope coding is a little bit clear to you, nominal, ordinal, and continuous data. Coding needs to be done for nominal and ordinal. Continuous data remains as it is. You do not code continuous data. And ordinal data, the lowest value goes to the lowest uh, measurement and highest value goes to the highest measurement. Nominal value, nominal data, any value you give to any option, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now, before you choose the statistical test for analysis, you need to test the test for normality. So all continuous data has to be tested for normality. This has to be done only for your scale measurement or your continuous data. If your data is, see, now this is a normally distributed curve. This will be done more in a statistical theory, so I'm not going to go into the theory aspect of normality. If the data is not normally distributed, it can be skewed. If the data is not normally distributed, it can be kurtosis. Okay. So in SPSS, we have an option, it's function called as explore. And that explore function helps you analyze the normality of the data. And for assessing normality of the data, there are different tests that we use. One test is Z-score of skewness. Okay, that's question, I think. One test, ma'am, in the drop-down option, the example that you showed contained more than 100 countries. That part, does that part require coding? Yes, so once you come at the stage of data analysis, you will have to code that data because we want to analyze data for different countries. So we will and code each country. So I can code India one, I could code, or I can go alphabetically based on the data that I have. I'll just show you all the data I have currently on that study. So on that study, currently I have data from India, UAE, and places like that. Okay, so see, this is the data sheet for that study. So I would not have, I have India, UAE, UK. So see, this is the data from that study. So India, UAE, Kenya, UK, Iraq, UAE, Egypt. So I will give one code to each of it. So I will just enter some rows on the top and I'll say India 1, UK 2, Kenya 3, Iraq 4, then UAE 5, then again Mauritius 6. I'm just going based on what city, country name comes up. Okay, there is no preferential treatment. The reason why I coded India 1 because India was the first person who filled the data was from India. Okay, so just for that purpose sakes, I would code it as 1, no other reason. So you will have to code because I want to analyze data by country. If I didn't want to analyze data by country, I may not have coded it. I would have just left it. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. I hope I've answered your question. Okay. So we'll go back. So to assess normality of data, the test that we use is first is Z-score for skewness, Z-score for kurtosis. Now when you calculate Z-score for skewness and Z-score for kurtosis, it has to be between minus 2.58 and plus 2.58. Then if your sample size is less than 200, you use a test called a Shapiro-Wilk test for analysis of normality. And if you have a sample size of more than 200, you use a test called Kolmogorov-Smirnov test to test for normality. Okay. And then there is a graphical representation, what we call as histogram. So now when we run a explore test, it gives you this kind of an output. In this output, as you can see, this is my mean for Z-score skewness, and this is the standard error for skewness. This is the mean for kurtosis, and this is the standard error for kurtosis. Now to calculate, if you remember, it is kurtosis divided by standard error of kurtosis. So what I need to simply do is minus 0.623 divided by 0.347. Okay, and for kurtosis, I will do 0.914 by 0.681 like this. Now these values, the value I get is minus 1.795 and minus, oh sorry, this has to be plus 1.479. Now these values, as I said, it has to be between minus 2.58 and plus 2.58. So these values are between plus and minus 2.58. So we can say that our data is normally distributed. Now you would say कि वहाँ तो normal आया, but this histogram doesn't look very normal. If you can see, this has a small left tail. So would you say it's normally distributed? Would you say it's not normally distributed? Normally, that is the reason why we do not rely solely on histogram. We will do analysis. Okay. Um, so when we will also see the statistical test. Now the sample size here was less than 200, so we will look at the Shapiro-Wilk test, and this is probably the only test, or one of the very few tests in statistics wherein we want the p-value to be more than 0.05, because only if this value is more than 0.05, that means the data is normally distributed. Now normality is a concept which you will understand more once you have your own data and you start your own analysis. So I'm not going to go more into details of what is normality, but you just remember that you need to assess the normality of data. Why is assessing normality of data important? Because normality of data teaches you the next step as to what is the test you need to choose for analysis of data. Before that, there's also a concept called as outliers. I think this slide you will understand more when you have your own data, so I'm just going to skip on this slide. Okay, so how do you choose what analysis you need to do? So we're going to give I'm going to give you a lot of examples. Okay, so suppose you have two groups, males and females. Okay, that is, I want to find out if there is a difference in body fat percentage of males and females. Okay, so I have two groups, males and females. That is, this type of data is called as unpaired data. That is, I have data from males, I have data from females. Males का data females का data नहीं बन सकता, females का data males का data नहीं बन सकता. So if I want to analyze the difference in body fat percentage of males and females, I means I have two groups, males and females, and I have unpaired data. Okay, means I have only one single reading of males and one single reading of females. But I only have one single reading of body fat of males and one single reading of body fat of females. Another example is, do vegetarians consume more carbohydrate than non-vegetarians? So again here I have intake of carbohydrates of vegetarians at one point and intake of carbohydrates of non-vegetarians at one point. So there are two groups and it is unpaired data. Unpaired means for one individual, I have only one single one-time reading. Now you will say, okay, ma'am, we take height, we take in triplicates and we take an average. So does that become one-time reading or it become more readings? No, it is one single reading because triplicates ka average lete ho. Okay. What is unpaired data is that for any given particular time point, you only have one single data. Sorry, for any given person, you have only one time point ka data. You don't have a follow-up data of that person. Another example of unpaired data would be wherein you have more than 3 or more groups. For example, is there a difference in the marks that are scored by individuals from lower, upper and middle socioeconomic strata? So here I have marks of children from lower, marks of children from middle and marks of children from upper socioeconomic strata. But I only have one single reading. Okay, 8 time ka marks. I don't have marks at the midterm and I don't have marks at the end term. I only have marks at the end term. So it's an unpaired data. I can have data from 4 groups also. So first example was 3 groups. First I started with 2 groups, males, females, vegetarian, non-vegetarians. Then I came to 3 groups, lower, middle and upper socioeconomic strata. Next I'm coming to, I have 4 groups from Mumbai, Pune, Delhi and Calcutta. Okay. So again, for each of these groups, I have only one single reading for one person or one city. Okay. But I can have another kind of data, which is an intervention study. I go and meet a group of people. I ask them that I check their hemoglobin levels. I find out that all of them are anemic. Because all of them are anemic, I decide to do an intervention with iron tablets and folic acid tablets in them. After giving them iron and folic acid, say for about 3 months, I go back to this population and I again check their hemoglobin levels. Now, if I had these 100 women who had checked at baseline and I had given them this iron tablets, and again after 3 months, I checked all the 100 women for their hemoglobin levels. So for each woman in this study, I have two readings at the baseline and at the end line. So I have two pairs of data for each woman, baseline and at 3 months. Okay, so this kind of data is called as paired data, but I have measured it only twice, at the baseline and at the end line. In another kind of a study, it is possible that I have more than 2 times data. What I mean is, let's take this last example. Is there a change in muscle mass post chemotherapy? So I work in a hospital, suppose for example, and I have a lot of cancer patients. Before the first cycle of chemotherapy, I check their muscle mass. Then I again check the muscle mass as 1 month. I again check the muscle mass as 3 months. And I again check the muscle mass at 6 months. So for each patient, I have 4 readings at baseline or before the first cycle of chemotherapy, at 1 month, at 3 months, and at 6 months. Okay. So basically, I have 4 pairs of data, 4 times each patient is measured. So that is again a paired data, but more 3 or more readings. Okay. Why am I telling you all what is pairing, what is unpairing, what is the number of times the reading is taken, or the number of groups that
Ma'am, ma'am, you're mute.
yeah, just hold on a minute, girls. Just hold on a minute. I'm in a class.
Girls, till then, if you have any doubts, you can post it in the chat box.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm back.
Yeah, nahi.
Just
Neha, you are on mute.
just to give me a minute, Sonu.
Yeah, sure.
Just a minute. I'm so sorry, girls. Okay. So based on whether it's the paired data or it's an unpaired data, you select the kind of test you're going to apply for statistics, and based on these tests, you create or calculate your sample size. If you're going to have only two groups and it's an unpaired data, the test which we use is called as independent sample t-test. And if we have unpaired data where we have three or more groups, the test which we use is called as one-way ANOVA. Now, when we calculate sample size, that how many people we need to include in the study, we need to define how many groups we have, okay? Only then we can calculate the sample size. Now, if we have paired data, that is pre, post, and we only have two readings, we use a test called as paired sample t-test. But if we have paired data when we have three or more readings, the test which we are going to use is called as the one-way ANOVA with repeated measures. So we need to use or report all of the, we need to keep this all in mind when we are calculating sample size. So when you create your proposal, you need to know whether you're going to use independent sample t-test, whether you are going to create paired sample t-test, whether you're going to do one-way ANOVA, or whether you're going to do one-way repeated measures ANOVA. It is very, very important to know that. Okay. Now, for example, if you're now these tests can only be used when your data is normally distributed. If your data is not normally distributed, then you need to use non-parametric tests. Okay. So if the data was not normally distributed, we would have instead of independent sample t-test, I would use a Mann-Whitney U-test. Instead of paired sample t-test, I would use the Wilcoxon sign-right test. Instead of the ANOVA, I will use Kruskal-Willis H test. And instead of one-way repeated measure test, I would use the Friedman test. Now, this is when you have continuous data. What if I didn't have continuous data? What if I had coded data? So what are examples of coded data in so again, in coded data, you can have paired data and you can have unpaired data. Now, in unpaired data, something like, is prevalence of smoking higher in males as compared to females? Okay. So, for example, here you will see where you will suppose you have 50 males and 50 females in the study, and you will ask each of them whether they smoke or whether they don't smoke, and then you will decide whether they are smoke. So it's you have only one reading for males and one reading for females, whether they're smoking or they are not smoking. Again, similarly, another example of this would be, is there a prevalence or there's a higher prevalence of diabetes in institutional elderly against non-institutional elderly? So what do I mean by institutional elderly? Institutional elderly mean elderly who are staying in old age home. Okay. So मुझे अगर prevalence पता करना है of any disease between two groups, then the data, then it is again two groups and it's an unpaired data. Another example of this would be when I have three groups. Okay. So are there more smokers in lower socioeconomic strata as compared to middle and higher socioeconomic strata? So when I am dividing, again, this is only finding prevalence of smoking, but instead of having males and females, here I am having three groups. Another example would be, is there a difference in level of education of residents of four cities? So again, level of education is ordinal data, which is again a coded data, and I have collecting data for 4 different cities. Now, next question is, did prevalence of smoking reduce after educational program? So for example, I went in this to this slum and I found out that 80% of males are smoking there. So therein, because the levels of smoking was so high, I decided to do an intervention study. I went and I gave them some lectures about side effects of smoking, how smoking affects them, how passive smoking affects the health of their family, how it will affect their income, their financial status, and other things. Okay. And then I just go and visit these people again after 3 months. And I see what is the effect of my counseling on their smoking levels. So again, here smoking is yes and no. Okay, but I have done an intervention. So I have paired data. I have data of smokers or this group of people before my intervention and percentage of people who are smoking after intervention. So paired data. Now this paired data I can have more than once I can meet my patient. So for example, in that chemotherapy cycle, I want to find out if chemotherapy has an effect on the diet. So anorexia, I want to find out if there are more people who are anorexic. I'm not talking about anorexia bulimia, I'm just simply talking about anorexia where you're not feeling hungry. Okay, so I will first find out before starting chemotherapy cycle, do they have this issue of not feeling chemo or not of having being anorexic. Then at the end of first month, after 3 months and after 6 months, I again check out their anorexia levels. So again, anorexia is in yes and no, but I have 4 readings: baseline, 1 month, 3 months and 6 months. Okay, so I have multiple readings, but again, my data is coded data. So when I have coded data, I can't use t-test or I can't use ANOVA. Okay, so if I have 2 groups and like male and female and prevalence of smoking, I can use chi-square test or Fisher's exact test. And if I have 3 or more groups, I will just use the chi-square test. Now, if I have paired data, that is smoking before and after intervention, I would use something called as McNamar's chi-square test. And if I have paired pre-post data wherein I have 3 or more readings, like in the example of anorexia, wherein I found out prevalence of anorexia at baseline, 1 month, 3 months and 6 months, I will use the Cochrane's Q test. Okay, so this is the base. These tests give you the difference in various parameters. Now, because I know I just wanted to finish it off till there, because that's much you will require at this stage of your work, wherein you do not actually have your data and you're just trying to find out your you're trying to write your proposal, you're trying to calculate your sample sizes. So this is the most important knowledge that you require till now. However, just to give a complete this class about what are the different basic statistical analysis, I am going to talk about correlations and regressions. So now these tests before this, that is your McNamar's test or your independent sample t-test or your ANOVA, they find out the difference in the 2 or more groups. But if I want to find out correlation, correlation is, if one increases, the other increases. Simplest example, if I have higher intake of fat, the higher chances of me having higher actual body weight. Okay, so both of them are going together in one direction, right? So another example would be if I have higher intake of sugars, my triglycerides may go high, because we know simple sugars are correlated with triglycerides. So correlation means one increases, the other also increases, or one decreases or the other also decreases. And another kind of correlation is negative correlation, wherein one increases and the other decreases. So a negative correlation. Example of negative correlation would be an increase in intake of fruits and vegetables would lead to a decrease in maybe I don't know. No, I can't think of it right now. I can't think of a negative correlation right now. But negative correlation basically means that one value increases, other. Okay, I'll give you an example. As the screen time increases, no, that would be again. The amount of screen time increases with or decreases with socioeconomic strata. So I will say, ma'am, ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? But this is something which we've seen in one of the studies I'm doing for my clients. So she studied, she took screen time, that is the amount of time children spend on TV, computer, or on mobiles. And she had children from different socioeconomic strata. What we saw was that the lower socioeconomic strata had the highest screen time, whereas the higher socioeconomic strata children had very low screen time. So this wasn't school children. So the lower socioeconomic strata children, they had no other means of spending time, leisure time, apart from watching TV or spending time on mobile. Whereas upper socioeconomic strata children, they had a lot of activities like their school, their extracurricular activities, the different classes they went to. So they spent a very less time on screen. So this was a negative correlation, that as the socioeconomic strata was increasing, the screen time was decreasing. So negative. So correlation values ranges from -1 to +1. As the value is closer to 1 on either of the side, means the correlation is stronger. As the values are closer to 0, means the correlation is weaker. So there are different kind of correlations. I'll just share this. I remember I'm yet to share the first slide, first PPT also. I'll share both this and that PPT together, and I'll send it across to Sonu to share it with you all. You all don't need to go into details of this. So depending on the kind of variable level of measurement, the different kind of test we are going to choose. And lastly, we have something called as regression. Now regression, once we find that something is correlated, then the next step is to do regression. Now regression helps you develop equations wherein if you have one value, you can predict the other value. So that is what regression is all about. Okay. There are three kinds of regression: linear, binomial, and logistic. Linear, binomial, logistic, and ordinal. And again, linear is for continuous variable, binomial is for nominal regression, and ordinal is for ordinal logistic regression. Remember, binomial can only be done binomial as it says 2. So only yes, no kind of a data, or male, female kind of a data, you can do binomial logistic regression, not for nominal variable with more than 2 variable categories. So this is something about how do you report data. So this I want you to know, because this you're going to read your scientific papers, so you all would want to know this. So if it is a continuous variable, normally the data is presented in a paper as mean, standard deviation, or standard error. If it is a not normally distributed data, then it is normally it is quoted as median and quartiles, or IQR, or minimum maximum. Normally any coded data is reported as frequency, percentage, or uh, um, percentage or proportions. Okay. So lastly, I would like to summarize the whole thing with that enter your categorical data as codes, enter your continuous data without units, present categorical data as frequency or percentage, present. Now I would not say present, rather when you read a statistical paper, you would find that the categorical data is given as frequency and percentage, and continuous data is given as mean, standard deviation, or median. And p-value, you will always read this word in your papers: p-value, 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 p-value. So p-value less than 0.05 is considered to be significant. What does significant means? It means that the results that are presented in the paper, they are, if there's a difference in two groups, then it is because of a statistical calculation. It is not by chance. Okay. Then this applies when you really have your data in your hand. So normally we check for normality before we apply any test. Always specify the level of measurements if you're using any kind of statistical software, whether it's an SPSS, Stata, whatever. Keep levels of measurement in mind when you're selecting the type of statistical test. And always remember that when you're reading a paper, if the authors have written that was no significant results, or there was negative results, even those results are results. So don't think, you know, ye to significant results nahi mila, why did they publish the paper? It is not. Even non-significant results are results, and they need to be published. So be happy that the author has published that kind of a paper. So I hope that at the end of today's class, you understood at least what are the different levels of measurement that you can study. And based on level of measurement, what are the different statistical tests that you would use? Because based on the level of measurement and statistical test you would use, you would know how to code your data. 1, 2, if you are at the stage of sample size calculation, you can do the sample size calculation. And 3, if you're already at the stage of data analysis, you can start analyzing your data after coding. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sonu.
Thank you, Neha, for such a wonderful presentation. Like always, I'm sure students have gained a lot from this, and
I hope
I'm
so.
sure
There
they will be
are,
having lots of questions also. We have 2 questions, Neha.
yeah, there are some questions in the chat also.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, एक minute, huh?
sure.
I'll just.
You want me to read the questions, Neha, for you?
एक second, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the the girl who had asked pehle only, she had asked, ma'am, while coding, is it important that all codes in one sheet start from 1 or 0? Okay, so Rabab, I don't know what you mean exactly. If you do, you mean that in each column should the coding be 1 and 0? Then I would say that across my data sheet, wherever I have yes, I would code it as 1, and wherever I have no, I would code it as 0. So it is not necessary that it should. I really don't know what exactly the Rabab you mean. So if you can.
Ma'am, I mean that if, for example, there is gender where we are coding males as 1 and females as 2, and then we have that interpretation of meals like coffee that I'm taking daily, fortnightly, monthly, for example that. So there we coded none as 0. So like in the gender column, codes start from 1, and in the coffee column, the codes start from 0. So is that an issue or not?
No, every variable is on its own. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Okay, so codes can either start from for any column, any
Yes,
independent
yes.
variable.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
In
Thank
fact,
you,
I
ma'am.
could have coded male as 11 and female as 22 also. It wouldn't have made a difference
Okay.
because it is categories. So it doesn't make a difference as such. Okay. So it really doesn't make sense. Okay. When
Okay. Thank you,
entering
ma'am.
data for blood, can we code low as 0, normal as 1, and 2 as high? Yes, you can code, but normally I would prefer coding it as 1, 2, and 3 rather than 0, 1, 2, because at times, but 0, 1, 2 is also fine. Yeah, that's not a problem. It's absolutely fine, Ruchi. Shikha has a question. Is there a possibility that after collecting the data, we realize the statistical test we choose while writing a proposal is wrong, and can we change it? So normally, Shikha, when you start your proposal, uh, the basic test may not change, okay? But however, if you realize that at the stage of analysis, instead of 2 groups, you want to make 4 groups, it's absolutely fine to change it from independent sample t-test to ANOVA. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to stick to it. But what happens is that in the proposal, you told that you will take only 200 people, and you had classified that you will have only 2 groups. Now, at this stage of analysis, you are saying that you will make 4 groups. Okay, but your sample size is still 200 only. So the power or the strength of your study can weaken in that case. So it's okay to change the test you are using, but then you have to make sure that the strength of your study does not decrease. So there's nothing wrong in changing the test, because it's quite possible, you know, like I said, when I do write my proposal, I will say I will do a paired sample t-test. But when I do the actual analysis, I use a test called as ANCOVA, analysis of covariance. Okay, that test is called. So now ANCOVA is one step ahead of paired sample t-test. So it does not change my sample size. It is just that I am doing a more stronger test. So in that case, it is okay. But if you're going to change from 2 groups to 4 groups, you need to look at the fact that whether the strength of your study is decreasing. Ma'am, do we give to add? I didn't get you, Arena. What, ma'am, do we have to add coding 0, 1, 2 in the end? Reena, can you speak more on the mic so I'm more clear as to what your question is?
Ma'am, I want to ask, like, what is the significance in the end of the numbers of 0, 1, 2? Like, suppose if for female I did 1 or not 2, or some did 0.
Hmm.
What does it make a difference like?
It doesn't make a difference. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make a difference. However, if I'm doing a KAP, whereas I'm assessing the knowledge of a person, then I might want to add all the knowledge questions. I might want to do a total of all the correct answers. So in that case, I would code all the correct answers as 1 and incorrect answers as 0. So therein I can total up all the answers and get a total percentage. Suppose I have 10 questions to assess nutrition knowledge of a person. Out of 10, there's 10 questions. One person gave 9 correct answers. Another person gave 6 correct answers. Another person gave only 1 correct answer. So now when I'm writing my report, it makes more sense if I give percentage correct answers, right? Out of 10, how many answers did people get correct? Average. Okay. So only when I want to total up, no, it makes a difference what code I give. When I have nominal data, otherwise it makes no difference what code you want to give. Ordinal data just makes sure that the lowest value or the lowest category has the lowest value and the highest category has the highest value. Again, usme, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can give 11, 22, 33, 44, 45. It doesn't make a difference. I'll tell you, when I teach research methodology, I even have a slide wherein, I have given that ordinal variable, the lowest has 7, 13, 50, 22, 53, like that codes. So coding will not make a difference till the time you're using them for calculations, till the time you're using it for correlations. Okay, if you're using it for correlation, I need to have that one particular gap, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. But if you're just using it purely for coding, if you're just using it purely for finding frequencies and percentages, it will not matter what code you give to what data.
Okay,
Yeah?
thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Any more questions, girls?
Girls, do you want to ask anything more? This is a very good time. Please think about any questions. Whatever ma'am has presented, you want to know anything?
I think they're all saturated.
Yeah.
So I did go a little bit technical, but then I think to
Yeah, it is.
teach coding, that was required, girls, that without teaching levels of measurement, without actually showing you all the Google Forms, I couldn't have taught you all that, why you should not use multiple choice questions and why you should use the check grid kind of question. Trust me, what diabetes wali mein, we had 240 people who filled the form. Our sample size was 200 for 240 people, and we had, I think, 7 or 8 multiple choice questions, and each multiple choice question had 8 or 9 multiple choices. So she had to manually create each single columns from the multiple choice, and it's a very difficult way to do it. So rather than that, do a check grid kind of a question. So see, even I am learning, because this whole collecting data with Google Form is new for all of us. We've all been collecting physical surveys, even all my students have been doing physical surveys. Physical surveys, it's much more easier. Okay, aapko form pe hai, aapko enter karna hai data. So with Google Forms, all of us are exploring. I would say explore, watch YouTube videos, what are the different kinds of questions that are there, and then help yourself select the questions. So just explore is what I would say. And so no, in fact, I would suggest you have about 40 students in a class.
40.
40. So as a class, you can develop a small questionnaire with just maybe say 10 questions, and do a Google form and have the students collect data. No, so they will also know how do you code it, and unless until they practically do it, they won't
Right,
know how to
because on a
apply it.
day-to-day
So
basis, they don't
they can
use
just do a
Google Form.
simple question.
I was,
None of us use,
yeah.
even for me, because the lockdown happened, we had to shift my students of IGNOU from physical to Google Forms. So none of us use Google Forms. So they would maybe just 10 simple questions, which will not be research based, even something like, just simple like education, type of diet, religion, only simple questions can be there and they can do it. So you can think about it that way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Girls, any more questions?
Okay, girls, then.
No.
Okay, so
Thank you so much, Neha, on behalf of UGC Stride. I thank you for taking such a wonderful session. And if they will be having any doubts, I'll get back to you again.
Sure. And I'll send you the PPT for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Neha.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye
girls.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
ma'am.
girls.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
बोला करो जब पूछते हैं सब, तुम सब लोग
Bye,
सुने हुए रहते हो. चलो बाय बाय, विल टॉक टुमारो.